let's commence this meeting. First of all, welcome back. It's great seeing you all. It's been forever since we've got together. It's good having the gang back. Good putting the band back together. This is kind of a new format, certainly a new format for me. So in order to try to help me keep order, if you could kind of raise your hand when you want to talk, and then I can acknowledge you, and then we can get you up in front of everyone. The first item I have is public invited to be heard. And Nicole, do you have something for us here?
No, nobody's reached out, but I'll continue to monitor my email in case I receive any notifications of public wanting to join.
Okay, great. It's my understanding, and I'll take discussion on this, but this section, public invited to be heard, is more, it's not so much question and answer, but just hearing what the public has to say and then note it, and then putting that in our heads for future discussion. Is that how everyone generally sees it?
Yes, you are correct. They would just call in. They would have a time limit. Usually it's 3 minutes, and they're able to basically say whatever they want to say, and then it's notated in the minutes. And then my understanding is that that's really about it.
Okay, so in future meetings, we'll go forward with that premise. So item number 3 I have is minutes from February 2020. Are there discussion on the February meeting minutes? Did everybody get a copy, first of all, and are there discussion items from that collection of minutes? I see nobody's hand up, so I will assume no. Oh, wait, Cynthia, do you have something to say?
Just one amendment on the first line, Mark, we're missing your name. That's it.
You're missing my name?
It says meeting was called to order by Cynthia Keller, proceeding in lieu, and then it's Mark Springfield.
Okay. Any other? You'll make that change? Any other recommendations? The minute says amended.
I move that we adopt the minutes as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It shows everybody's hand is up. Okay, very good. Okay, library director's report on reopening. Nancy,
Wow.
You have the floor.
Well, I barely know where to start. It's been a lot of months, but it was interesting. It's been an interesting experience. Staff has done very well for the most part in being incredibly adaptable. We've all had to learn how to just punch with something every single day since this all started. So we have about half staff in our building at a time, as per our plan with Boulder County Public Health. So that means at any one time we have about 31 people total in the building. We have had to repurpose what some people do because we're doing things quite differently now. We have people still, 25 people at a time in the building, and plus we have 5 people available for computer appointments at a time. We're still following what we call a grab and go model, which we're trying to keep up, which basically means you can come in and fetch your holds. You can still use curbside pickup, which a lot of folks are still doing. You can go into both the children's and teens department and the adult services department and browse for materials. You can use a computer by appointment, and you can receive reference help from the librarians. There are a lot of things you can't do. You can't sit down. We still have all of our furniture moved. About 4 of us moved every piece of furniture just about in that library. I think my back can still feel it from March or April, whenever that is. So, but you never realize how much furniture you have until you move it. You can't access our study rooms. Our whole west side of the building is blocked off from patrons. That's where we have piles of furniture up and down the hallways. We have staff who are using the conference room right now as their office space. We've had to move some staff to places that are not our usual staff work areas because some folks were too close together. We have our meeting room is still filled with materials that are returned, which we are still quarantining for 3 days at this point. When we first started, we were required to quarantine everything 7 days, and that was quite a long time. So I still answer patrons, multiple emails and calls every day of patrons wanting to know why something didn't come off of their library record yet for those who check them online. But we've all pretty much got the quarantine bit down by now, and patrons have been very understanding of the quarantine. We have a greeter station at our east side door. So that's been another staff task to do. We are required by Boulder County Public Health to take contact information, which is name and phone number of everyone who comes in. This is mostly because libraries were classified as an event rather than a venue. So events usually have tickets, and that's not a big deal because people have to give their name and number with their ticket information. But since we are classified as an event, we are still required to take that information. Now, some libraries, depending on their where they're located, what their legal officials say, and what their county health officials say, are not taking information. But it hasn't been a big deal. We thought more people would protest. We're able to accommodate people who don't want to give information by using curbside pickup, and we don't do anything with it unless an outbreak were to be traced back to the library. So we keep it for X amount of time past any possible incubation period, and then it's shredded. So people have been okay about that. The greeter also counts people going in and out and makes sure that everyone has on a mask. The masks have gone pretty well. We've had a couple folks this past week that haven't wanted to wear them. Once again, if they don't want to wear them, we can accommodate them using curbside pickup. We don't allow them to come in the building. So we had all the same things everybody else does at the beginning. People gave us fake cards that said, I don't need to wear a mask, etc. But as long as we can accommodate people, we are requiring the masks to be worn. Technically for patrons over 3 years old, but we aren't quite as stringent if there's a 3-year-old wearing the mask on top of their heads. Things happen with little kids. But I feel like the staff is, like I said, the staff has done really well. We have an every 2-hour cleaning schedule. All of us have a whole bunch of things. I feel like I've drowned in Clorox spray until now. Just an example, like every 2 hours, admin, which is just me and Jake, our security person right now, we do the banisters, the elevators, all the light switches in the building, all the door handles, the staff bathrooms, the staff kitchen, the entries. So everything is sprayed down and sanitized every 2 hours. It actually, I think we've had fewer people interestingly enough, we've had fewer people call in sick than ever. I wonder if it's because we're sanitizing the heck out of the entire building and wearing masks. But it's important to us to keep everything clean, and actually the patrons have been very grateful when they see us all out there sanitizing. So it's interesting because we'll be out there sanitizing and they'll say, oh, don't you have janitors or custodians to do that? And we explain to them that everybody does it. This is an all hands on deck thing. And we think no matter what happens with COVID, we're going to do it all through flu season because people just aren't getting sick at the same rate that they normally do. So it was difficult at first to get all of the cleaning products that we needed with all of the shortages, but I found the wonders of the city warehouse. And we have wonderful people that work at the city warehouse. It's like a little Costco of cleaning products. So Jason, Meryl, and I went over there and took a tour and almost wept with gratitude when we saw, all the Clorox wipes and the things that we were not able to get at that point by ourselves. So I worried yesterday that because it was in the news that there was a non-latex glove shortage, which apparently there is across the country. They all come from Malaysia, and there's a shortage that stems from just lack of supply, and apparently gloves take longer to manufacture than than some of the other things that have experienced shortages. So contacted the warehouse, and Dennis said, "Oh no, we're good." So I think they have a lot of supplies for us, which has been a really great amenity. They will even deliver them over to our library. Tons of construction going on throughout all this. We've been hearing the jackhammer since before, I don't know, February or March, before all of this started. So the plaza will look quite different when we're done. The rebar is down. The jackhammering is pretty much done, thank goodness. We all borrowed the little noise canceling headphones from our children's department for a while. The heating elements are going in next. That will heat up that pavement between the library's west entrance and the Civic Center entrance, which is usually kind of a slick of black ice over the wintertime. So that'll be awesome. And then the concrete will go on top. And next, after that, they will start on our keyhole opening. That's the opening that you see in children's that has the tree in it. The tree is going to be short-lived. It's going to have to go. The planter in the keyhole opening, unfortunately, is also too heavy and is causing problems down below. So still looking at quite a bit of construction. I don't know when it'll stop. I know that they have some deadlines coming up due to weather concerns. So I know that there are limits to when you can pour concrete. So it's been noisy, hectic. Staff, like I said, has weathered everything pretty well, but we do have some folks who are still out due to health reasons and who cannot work in person at the library yet. So still have a few folks who are out. We're able to have most of them, if not all, work remotely, the ones who are not able to come in. So I assume you guys are going to have questions maybe about what's going on. We are seeing 300 and something people a day. So not nearly what we would see pre-COVID, but still some respectable numbers.
Okay, great, thanks. Let's do this one at a time. Does anybody have any questions for Nancy on this? Raise your hand. I'm trying to scan to make sure I see everybody. Okay, I see no hands raised. So great report. Oh, wait, we've got a couple. Katie, you want to go first?
Yeah, just how's the staff feeling in general? Are they feeling like it's safe and they're happy to be back, or?
They are. It's been tough. I mean, there were some that had a tough kind of, some were very fearful when it was time to come back and reopen the building, and with good reason. This is an unprecedented situation. So a lot of folks felt better once they actually came back in. And once they have become a part of all the precautions that we're taking, we are extremely careful. So, staff are very good about standing, 6 to 10 feet away from each other when we have conversations. We're very careful about moving to the side when we pass each other, et cetera. So the distancing, the masks, and the sanitization, I think, are really good. So I think most staff feel better. But staff, at the library, like anywhere else, they're conflicted. And we have a lot of people with young kids. We have people with some who are taking care of elderly parents. We have, people who have a lot of concerns outside of work that make it tough to be at work sometimes. So for the most part, we have a great staff, and we're all kind of, we joke about kind of being one big, happy, dysfunctional family, and people are really supportive of each other. So that's really helped a lot. Thanks for asking, though.
Catherine, were you next? Did you have a question?
Well, I just wanted to commend Nancy and the staff on everything that you did to get the library open. I know my family and I were there, super excited. I think on day 2, it felt like such a hole in my heart to not be able to go to the library with my kids. So everything you're doing really matters and is hopefully appreciated. And yeah, I was just really impressed by the systems you put in place, and having not been there for how it all happened behind the scenes, I thought that it came together beautifully. So kudos to you and your team.
Thank you. It has worked really well. You never know when you put together a plan for something that hasn't happened before, but we haven't had to change a whole lot. So we have, not too surprisingly, in a library, you have, a building full of really detail-oriented people. So I think that's really helped. We kind of formulated the plans with our management team. But then once we put it out to our entire team, people had a lot of fabulous ideas and really good input. And like I said, we punt every day. So, you know, there are little things that don't work, and we just tweak them and move on. So we've seen you there. We appreciate it. And it's fun to watch patrons that came in at first. One of our first gentlemen was a senior citizen, and he came and did kind of a little soft shoe dance in front of the doors. My library is open. So that's been really nice.
That's great. Okay, who else have I forgotten here? Anybody else want to jump in on this topic? Okay, Cynthia, I see you, and then I see Kathy.
Nancy, you touched on this, but it sounds like security is going pretty well.
Oh, it is. We hired Jake Williams right when this all happened. I think it was February. So, you know, he had to kind of be thrown into this really weird environment initially, and he's doing just an awesome job. We were really grateful that we had Jess, and Jake does just as good a job as Jess did, and he has not only done a good job for us, but he has really kept an eye on everything that goes on that's in the Roosevelt Park area, which is quite a bit of shenanigans that go on in Roosevelt Park area in the pavilion and throughout the park. So he is going to be supervising a campus attendant that will be stationed over there. So we are going to be doing interviews with that shortly, but he has really just jumped right in. Like you said, he's the only other one that's regularly in the building with me and admin. So we've had him do all kinds of things that aren't part of his job as well, but supremely organized. We spent, he and Jason Merrill and I entered hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of names into a database. We're now keeping track. Now we have an actual database where we keep track of incident reports from like 2014 on. We didn't have anything previously that was searchable. They were just, you know, reports and folders. And if you saw someone that, if you thought, oh my gosh, I think this person has caused some issues before, you had to look through an awful lot of years of reports. And now it's all searchable by name and by all kinds of other fields. So we did spend some time doing that when we were out, but he's doing a great job. He's the one that set up and organized the greeter table. And we have a walkie-talkie system. We have code words that we say that mean different things when someone needs some assistance outside. So it's all good.
Okay, Kathy, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to commend Nancy on continuing the curbside service. I probably didn't think you would take it away anyway, but I know there's a lot of people in town, myself included, that appreciate the fact that I'm not quite ready to go inside a building yet. So and I appreciate that the curbside is there.
Oh, thank you. We're not going to discontinue that anytime soon. We've been making our winterizing plans. We are borrowing from one of the ice rink things. We are borrowing one of the big space heaters, and we check with risk first to make sure we're not, setting everything on fire. But, we need more lights. So you're going to see space heaters and twinkle lights out on the east side so we can keep going when it gets a little bit colder. But we have quite a few folks that find it very convenient, and we have quite a few folks that just for a variety of reasons are not ready to enter the building. So it's been a little challenging the last few days when we had citywide phone issues. So when people can't phone in, everybody just came up, and we had our circ staff is amazing. They were out there with little order pads like they were, car hops, just taking names and running back and getting things for people. So it's been a bit of a challenge, but people caught on really quickly to that curbside delivery. And we just get some people say, well, why are you still doing this? But I'm not eating, we personally are taking out from restaurants but not eating inside. It's the same thing. It's been kind of fun. We've seen a lot of people. It's fun to see our regulars come up. So
great. Catherine?
I was just wondering how you anticipate adapting as the weather changes and the time change happens, if you think you'll be able to maintain those outdoor spaces.
Well, we will do it for a while. The space heaters are the big commercial type ones that they use at restaurants. So they do throw off, in California, you get outside all year with those, and they do throw off quite a bit of heat. we may have to, it depends on what we still have to continue to do. If our numbers would go the other direction instead of increasing, then, you know, it's a possibility when we get to the next phase that we won't have to take contact information anymore. And at that point, we wouldn't need a whole greeter station out there. We would just need a person that could be inside the vestibule counting people that go in and out, for example. As far as the curbside pickup, though, we're really going to try and keep doing it with the table just right outside the doors, and as long as we can. There is that overhang there. We have a tent and an overhang, so it does stay relatively sheltered there. We haven't gotten wet yet. We've had some rain. We had the little tent that we have threatened to blow away once because we hadn't found the tent weights yet. So it took off once, but and we had our banner stolen once, but our curbside banner was kind of strange. But all in all, we're just going to keep going. We don't know what's going to happen, so we'll see.
Okay, Cynthia.
And see if numbers do keep going up. You know, I know we all hope they don't. Anything you can share about?
Well, it's our fervent hope that numbers do not continue to go up, because the last thing we want to do is go backwards. But we will go backwards if we have to. You know, if the numbers are really to the point where we talked about Boulder County Public Health and they don't feel that it's safe, we'll go back to curbside only. I hope very much not to do that, because it's really been I think good for everyone to be able to have people in the building. But you know, that's what people actually, it's not just us. You know, I have at least bi-weekly calls with a lot of library directors across the state, and it's the same worry for everyone, is that if the numbers go up, you might have to go back to the previous state. But at least now we know what happened. You know, at least now if we go back and then we go forward again, it's a lot easier. But it's all dependent on the numbers. We have not, though, done the maximum. I think I would say in our consortium, Loveland is probably the most back to normal. They're up to over 100 people in the building at a time and close to their normal circulation. So they're probably at the most normal operations. We are among the more normal as far as letting people in the building to browse, etc. Some of the libraries in our area are still not allowing any browsing. They're still only up to curbside. So it really varies widely from community to community. And just what staffing looks like, we've been very lucky with the city's conservative handling of budget monies. Some libraries, I know Boulder's had, I think, 17% cut in their overall budget for their libraries, and a lot of layoffs, and a lot of they're going to have furlough days. And I think you can only, in Boulder so far, pick up holds at the main library, and they have curbside at one of the branches, and that's it. So they're not where we are yet. So all things considered, we're kind of counting our blessings to be where we are right now.
Do you think that Boulder has elected to prioritize the library to a lesser degree than Longmont? Is that why they're doing some of the things you just cited?
You know, I don't know enough about it. You know, their situation is just different. You know, they have multiple branches, and, you know, they're still allowed only to have half of their staff. So at this point, they don't have the branches open. You know, the numbers are higher in Boulder than they are where we are. And their overall budget is $8 million plus. So, you know, they'll be taking a cut in their budget, but that still leaves them at almost $7 million a year. So I just don't know where the library falls. I can't even, you know, pretend to figure out where the hierarchy of another city. And I also don't know as much about what their overall budget picture is. So I don't want to make any assumptions. They're doing, you know, like us, they're doing the best they can with what they've got.
All right, thank you.
We do have all of our deliveries going between the libraries, so we can certainly get materials from any of the other libraries in our consortium.
Councilman Water?
You know, just on the budget question, Mark, what's played out across the state is that municipalities that depend largely on people who are non-residents to contribute to the economy. University towns and tourist towns, resort towns have suffered far more than municipalities that are not reliant on outsiders. So in Boulder County, the L towns have been sectors have been deeply affected, like hospitality. But our overall general fund budget, which we were estimating, Jim Golden was estimating we were going to take an $18 million, we were going to come up $18 million short in revenues. He adjusted that to $11 million by June. And it looks now like we're going to finish the year just kind of meeting budgets, right? The bigger concern is in 2021, and if we see a general recession or a deeper recession, or potentially a depression, much of what we've done with the 2021 budget is anticipate that scenario. So a lot of the budget balances that were created in this budget are being used for one-time expenditures in 2021, and with some reticence about making deep commitments to ongoing expenses because of what likely or what is feared may happen in 2021 and 2022 more generally with the economy. But Longmont's fared much better than we thought we would 6 months ago.
Well, that's great news. That's great news. Okay, any further discussion on this agenda item, or are we ready to move on? Okay, I'll take that as we're ready to move on. So Nancy, you're still up. You're going to help us understand the consultant's draft report, please.
Okay, it is just a draft at this point, and the reason that it's not a little bit farther along, obviously, is because we actually met with the consultants when we were at the American Library Association conference in March, and then that was, it was directly after that everything stopped. So there, we did put things on hold for a while. We were reluctant to move into the phase where they were going to have a subcontractor do the financial modeling, considering that the financial pictures look far different than they did when we started this. So we did kind of resurrect the project in August. So they did come back to us with a preliminary report. Most of it did not hold too many surprises, and we'll be sending the revised next draft around shortly. We had already discussed some of the results of this survey preliminarily, but I think when we had our last meeting, we'd only had like 500 responses so far, and we did get about 1,500 plus responses to the paper survey, smaller amounts of people at the meetings, but a lot of good input. It's pretty much exactly what we had talked about ahead of time. We had a fair amount of people that would like to see the library expanded, that would like to see more technology, more programming, more materials, and then we had a fair amount of people that said, no, the library is great the way it is, don't do a thing. So that's pretty typical in these surveys. There were some things that stood out. The consultants they're not going to say, okay, given the circumstances, here's what we see, do this, but they did give several kind of general recommendations of directions we could go in looking at these results. Some of them are very cut and dry. The one, for example, that talks about the available space in the library is just done according to accepted formulas for public libraries across the country. Not too surprisingly, we are quite a bit smaller than we need to be for a community of this size, and definitely for a community that is growing. So we have our 51,000 square feet. I think they figured that we should have right now more like 81 to 85,000 square feet, and larger than that for a population when it tops out of 100,000 or over 100,000, 125, 130,000 people. So there are multiple ways to do that. In some communities, they do one big giant library. In many communities, especially ones which are somewhat spread out, it is more advisable to do branches in locations that people did indicate in the survey some really strong preferences toward having some branch libraries. It looks like a north and a south branch would probably be a good way to go in the future. And also, Karen and I were talking today that this library was was opened in 93, but it was actually designed in 1990. So this is a 30-year-old building. This is like the first, Karen said it's like the first project she got to work on when she started 30 years ago in the city. And libraries have changed a lot in 30 years. So the consultant is offering multiple different scenarios, which I will be sending around to you. And we will be letting the community know. Now, when Tim spoke out in favor of funding the library going forward, I mean, we've seen some interesting reactions in the paper, et cetera. But you know, people don't always take things the way they were intended. And people said, how can you think about building a new library in 2020? Well, obviously we're not building anything in 2020. We're hanging on by our fingernails. So, you know, it's a very long report. So we'll be sending the whole thing around. The part that's delayed it a little bit is that the consultants were still using the statistics that I had given them about peer libraries when we started this. We started it a year and a half ago. So I have updated everything, all of the stats in there, and are giving it back to them to use their formulas on just making sure that we have all 2019 stats. So we have the latest apples to apples comparisons to other libraries nearby and across the country. So no concrete recommendations yet, but we're getting a lot closer.
Questions for Nancy? Councilman Waters?
Nancy, just to clarify, I think what I heard you say, and I think in the materials we saw when you presented to council, is that we in terms of square footage, we currently make available or operate 60 to 65% of the square footage that a community this size should make available.
We should, yeah, we have about 51,000 square feet. We should have 80 to 85. So, and that's now, that's not counting future growth.
So we're underbuilt by 45%.
We are
30 to 35% right now.
Yes.
And as I recall, the average per capita expenditure for library services in Colorado is $46.
Yeah, we're low. We're lower than I thought, actually.
We saw a number in your materials, and then you modified it. We saw $36.
I think we might be closer. I think we're close to that.
So I did make a comment and was quoted that we are $800,000 at least under resourced. That's an $8. That would take your $38 compared to 46.
Yeah.
It was more like $1 million under resourced.
Yeah.
And my comment was that we're not going to squeeze $1 million
out
of these budgets incrementally.
No.
It's going to take either a dedicated sales tax or a library district to close the gap, both on square footage and on operating support. I mean, there's just, if you aspire to average.
Yes.
If your aspirations are to be above average, then it's more than $1 million, and it's more than 35 to 40% greater build out in terms of square footage. Now, I'll say one more thing. I did read yesterday that among the list of reasons why this is the worst city council in the history of Longmont is that Waters wants a new library.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is true. I mean, I would say, put me in the yes column. I do want to, let's expand the library, right? Let's add to the library. So they got that right. Whether that's a reason to be on the all-time worst list or not, somebody else to judge. But if I'm the only one who thinks that we need to expand the library, then I'll just stand that way. But that letter invites others who share that thought to respond.
It does.
I'm not going to respond. I'm on the record with what my thoughts are, and I don't need to respond to somebody's letter to the editor. But if the friends of the library or members of this board think that we're underdeveloped or under-resourced, now is a good time to start communicating that. And keep communicating that between now and the time we are able to deal with the report and its implications and whatever recommendations this board is prepared to make when the time comes. So,
can you help us understand, because I missed the letter, which publication was it in?
On the Times Call. It was just one of those snarky emails that we read from time to time.
I could send the several letters from the Times Call around to the board. there is another one that has nothing to do with, well, not as much to do with just the straight finances, but actually there have been a couple comments in various, I think they were all in Times Call, saying that we don't spend enough money on the homeless, so we, why are we spending money on books? And that's where I would love for someone to draft a response. The libraries do serve homeless people, that we are an important resource for people who are experiencing homelessness. And we are a de facto day shelter, and we are a source of knowledge and a source of connectedness to the rest of the world for people who are experiencing homelessness. So
I think that was a comment. I think that was a TC line comment, I think.
it was.
And I read it as well. I said to my wife, it's interesting if anybody looks at the data. We're doing more for our most vulnerable populations, our housing insecure and homeless populations. We're doing more than Longmont has ever done.
Yeah.
As we remain way below average when it comes to our library and library services. So if anybody looks at the data, the truth, in my view, the truth is quite a different story. If you look at it, just look at evidence. So.
Well, from my perspective, this meeting's public record, and I would like to thank you for the comments you made at council meeting in support of the library. I thought they were right on. And my concern is that as we debate this, we probably are missing the mark by talking about the library of the 21st century, because a fifth of it's already gone.
Yeah.
So by the time we marshal the forces to make something happen, it should be the library of the 22nd century.
Yeah.
So a lot of work needs to be done yet, unfortunately.
And the aspiration that I think we need to get clear on is not to try to get to average. The aspiration needs to be to set the mark. What's the standard that Longmont seniors, adults, and children deserve in terms of facilities and financial support of the library? So that aspiration ought to be way above average. It ought to approximate whatever is best in class.
Agreed.
There was a comment in the survey by several patrons that basically said that there's definitely a divide that they see between the innovative nature of Longmont and the old-fashioned-ness of the library. So that expressed fear that the library, that we would become just a place of technology and leave behind some of the more traditional library services, which I don't think was anyone's intention. So it's interesting. It's a lot. The survey's huge, but it's a good read. So as soon as we have those stats revised, we'll send it around. And in the meantime, I will forward you the comments that have been in the press recently.
Very good. Comments for Nancy on this item? Cynthia?
So this is actually, well, I have two things. I have a question for Nancy, but I also have a comment to the board / question to the board. After listening to Councilman Waters, do we want to make a statement after we read? I'm not prepared to before reading the draft, but as we do read that, would it be timely now? Do we want to come out with a board statement in whatever form that would take?
Does anybody want to respond to that? Well, I'll take a shot and say that I'd like to read the information first, but I'm open to discussing that in terms of trying to put together some statement of the board's position. Anybody else?
I would support that, certainly.
I would support it as well.
Because it is, because it is an awful lot of reading. To see it in its current form, I am happy to send it around to you now, and then we can amend, send you what's amended with the statistical part. or you can wait for the entire thing to be revised. It's up to you.
Well, let me clarify. When I said I wanted to read it, I wanted to read the comments to the newspaper in order to determine how to respond to
Oh, okay, got it.
the public opinion. That's me personally. But, you know, certainly I'd like to see the consultant's report as well. And I'm sure the rest of the board would also. Catherine?
Just to clarify, Nancy, are the comments that were published in response to people just seeing the survey go out? Or was
No,
there some information?
they haven't seen the survey results yet because they're just preliminary. It's just a draft form. The comments, I believe, were mostly in response to Councilman Waters' comments that the library, the library is not going to be adequately funded through the general fund.
Other thoughts from other board members at this time? Cynthia?
So I to clarify as well, I actually would like to read the report from the consultants before making a statement. So I agree, if you could send out the preliminary draft, that'd be great. And then I guess mark a request, and I perhaps should email this, that we could put this on our next agenda to discuss what type of response the board next month in more depth.
Great. I had one question for you, Nancy, if everybody else has asked theirs. With respect to the edits that you mentioned are occurring with the consultants, I'll call it base report because I know they've revised it a couple times. What kind of edits are those? Are those just statistical updates, or are there other types of edits going on?
There are just, there's some grammatical little stuff, but there's mostly statistical, and we wanted to make sure that, like I said, that they have several sections where they compare our numbers to those of peer libraries, and in a couple instances, one in particular, I want to be honest with all of this and above board, and in one area, it looked as though because we were using almost 2-year-old statistics for ebooks, it looked as though our ebooks were really abysmal as far as the amount that we had in our collection. And we've actually spent a whole lot of money the last couple of years to beef up our ebook collection. So I wanted to make sure they're still below where they need to be for demand, but they're not as far below as the consultant had it in their report. So I just want to make sure that we have all of our most up-to-date statistics. That was the most egregious difference, I guess, in what they reported as a result of looking at the statistics and comparing them to other libraries. But I just want to make sure that everybody's 2019 stats are there and we're comparing apples to apples, and that we're not just portraying things the way they really are. So there were just some statistical anomalies in there. Like I said, the ebooks was really the one that stuck out, that made me go back and start updating all of the peer library stats as well, because some of them had the same similar things that had happened, that it looked like their ebook supply was supremely low as recently as a couple of years ago, and now they've put a lot of money into it. And actually, if you look at our ebook numbers next year, they'll be really good in comparison to what they were, because we've spent so much on e-materials this year as opposed to print because of COVID. But we're not going to be comparing COVID. 2020 stats are just going to be that weird, I don't know, black sheep of the family type stats that nobody compares to anything. So.
Okay, very good. Unless there's other questions, I'm prepared to move on. And not seeing any, the next agenda item is Little Free Libraries. Normally I would defer to Kathy on this, but I'm not sure how this one got on the agenda. Was this your item, Nancy?
Kathy and I had talked about it. Actually, Kathy had sent me something, and as you know, months ago, our Little Free Libraries were destroyed, repaired multiple times, and I had contacted some folks with the neighborhood association, et cetera, to see if they had any suggestions for us several times, and didn't receive any responses. I've been reluctant. One of them, though, Kathy told me has been removed, I believe.
That is correct. The one at Affolter Park, where the construction is going on, is not there.
So we do not know at all what happened to that one. The other one is still there, but we have not had it repaired. We were going to have discussed, I think in March, whether or not we wanted to go keep putting the money and effort into repairing that location when it's been, I think, destroyed 3 times so far, or if we should abandon it entirely, or if we should look for new locations for those little free libraries. So I'm definitely open to what your opinions are on those.
Board, anybody want to jump in? Okay, let me take the opportunity then. I had a couple questions as you that ran through my mind as you were talking. These little libraries were one of a kind, essentially, or 2 of a kind. They were homemade. They were made by the folks in town. And as a consequence, they probably carried 0 cost to them. If we were to buy little libraries, are they cheaper? Are they more durable? Well, we have another consultant now. Does anybody have any feel for that or thoughts on that?
Mark, I don't have an idea what a purchased versus constructed, packaged versus constructed unit, little library might look like. But I do think it's worth, as I'm sitting, I'm wondering why haven't I asked this question before? There are parts of the city and neighborhoods, I'm sure, where there is some kind of surveillance, electronic surveillance, where around parks. I know around parks we've put in surveillance cameras for just to monitor and make it very clear that this area is surveilled, so that people will modulate or regulate their behaviors, right? Because somebody might be watching. So the thought of not having little libraries is not very appealing. And I don't know, Nancy, if you've had any conversations with anybody in the city about where do we in the city and neighborhoods have security surveillance, whether it's around parks or some other city installation, where you could also get eyes on a little library and just post it. This area is surveilled, so that maybe that's a deterrent to people's behavior. And if it's not a deterrent, you could always go back and potentially follow up with whoever the perpetrators are.
Let me follow up on that, because I'll take you back to the beginning of our discussions on this. And one of the goals of the board at that time was to try to supplement the little free libraries that you see popping up everywhere in the community. For those sections of town that didn't have access to that, or that the library could support additional out services in their behalf. So if they also happen to have security, great. But if not, then maybe the security should follow the location of the library instead of vice versa. Any other thoughts? Nancy, you popped up. Did you have something?
No, I think it is a good idea to put them somewhere where there is surveillance, and that could be a park, but it could also be next to one of the city buildings in some other areas of town where we would be able to see what's going on. This was obviously people with baseball bats, so I think it would be a deterrent to, and I think that there are some parks, at least, and from what I have heard from Jake, there may be some other parks that are going to have some more security cameras in the future. So I think putting it somewhere where someone can see what happened to it, even I don't think I would have even thought the same way if they'd only been vandalized once, but once you rebuild it and it's we had kind of 3 strikes with those. I think it's time to try and look for a better location with some kind of on that location.
Nancy, do you want to follow up on Mark's question about rather than looking for where there is already surveillance, find the ideal place for the little library, and then let's approach public safety about it, creating some surveillance capacity
Well,
wherever that happens.
we can do that, but I know I don't have a problem following up with this, and I'll sick Jake on it too, because I think that there are some plans to put more cameras in certain places around town now, and it's not really a simple procedure all the time with making sure that you have the security and that you have the people available to monitor that security and that's all set up. So let me see where it is that it looks like there will be some new locations for the security as well, where cameras are going in, and see if we can find some spots.
I wasn't making an assignment because I was going to offer to follow up myself if you wanted me to. That's all.
No, I think, well, if you'd like to, by all means, go ahead. But I think Jake has some knowledge of
Then I'll
having
defer.
discussions about
I'll
security
defer.
cameras. So let's see if we can find a better spot with some security going in. And I know that some of the parks have been mentioned at some spots that may have cameras coming.
Catherine, you want to say something?
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could talk a little more about the original criteria that were used to locate them. Like, were there neighborhoods that were asking for them, or were the neighborhood councils involved, or was it just based on sort of like census data or socioeconomic factors? Because that data might be useful to look at with a contemporary lens.
Well, there's some board members that were present during the discussion at those times, but I'll give you my 2 cents. We worked with the library director at that point in time, and she identified areas that also were part of the city's initiatives in other areas, be it like summer reading programs or educational assistance or things like that. And that's how those 2 locations came about. And then we had a council member as a liaison at that point in time that used the resources at the makerspace to actually construct the 2 little libraries that we had and installed them. Actually, I think at one time we had 3, and one's at Sandstone, and I believe that's
The other one is at the youth center. So we had 4. We have 4.
okay. And I haven't heard anything about Sandstone. Oh, yeah.
I'm not good at the raising the hand thing. But with the school program of free lunches during the summer,
That's right.
so it went in those areas where the book cycle would go. Again, it was trying to reach areas where people weren't coming to the library. So there was some data given by the director at the time based on that, and that's where we placed them. But yeah, I would concur that you can't just keep putting them there. So, and school's not in session anyway, so might as well try somewhere else.
Yeah, just to follow on that, I think in the evolution of little libraries, this was pretty early on, and we were picking up on some work that was done from other communities. And at that time, they weren't as prevalent throughout our Longmont neighborhoods as they are today. So some people have taken that idea and they've really gone to town with it, so to speak. But there's still a concern, or I would say there's still a concern by me that those less than adequately served communities in our town are able to get books as readily as we'd like them to. Nancy?
Just so you all know, we have had staff from the library, bilingual staff, going out to the lunch distribution points this summer, and we have used many of those books, handed out many of those books that we had set aside to stock the little free libraries. as well as other books. The Friends have been great since they haven't had sales. They've been allowing us to go down and kind of shop in their donations area downstairs. And so we have given out hundreds and hundreds of books and materials to folks that don't have as many opportunities for reading material this summer. So I guess what we have done in place of having the little free libraries this summer is a lot of in-person outreach instead. So just it's different, but I didn't want you to think that we weren't serving anyone in the meantime. We do have staff from multiple departments that are going out, like I said, bilingual staff, and we are offering both free books and also giving out library cards in those areas.
Well, if I left you with that impression, then I badly stated
no.
the position. But that was just the kind of the idea behind the little libraries, and how do you do something economically, because we were then, and we still are, living on the cheap, and we were trying to figure out how to maximize our footprint with the smallest amount of expense. Catherine?
I think Kathy was first.
Kathy?
Okay. Yeah, I was just going to ask, do we know, did the parks do they have the one that was in Affolter Park? The physical library?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Catherine?
I was just curious because Katie brought up that there were 4 of them originally. So do the other ones still exist?
I have no reason to believe that the one at the youth center one is inside the youth center. So I feel pretty good that it still exists. I don't know anything about the one at Sandstone. I mean, I know that it existed, but it was like its own thing. So that's another one where I think it probably exists. Yeah.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think when the in the stocking of them putting books in the little libraries, it ended up being that those 2, at the one at Affolter and the one at Rothrock-Dell, were the 2 that needed to be stocked by us, by someone at the library, and then the board took that over. The other 2, I think the location that they are at, those people are the ones who are keeping it stocked.
Okay, so in terms of trying to wrap this up, then how do we want to leave it? That you will talk to the city, Nancy, about security arrangements, and hopefully we can marry safe locations with desirable locations from a outreach standpoint.
Okay.
Maybe they can offer a half a dozen or more, and we can just say, out of those, these are ones that meet the board's and the library's needs.
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement with that? Raise your hand if you're in agreement. I see everybody's hands up. Okay, then I'll move on to board member terms. And I'll start this one off. This was a discussion that went back well before the COVID virus, but there was confusion over the various terms of the board members and when their expiration were to occur. And Nancy had gone to quite a bit of work with the city to try and get that straightened out. And we thought we had that clarified, at least in terms of the board's view. And then, unfortunately, during the coronavirus, as I understand it, the term or the position that you occupied, Catherine, came up for a vote by council, and fortunately, we kept you on the board as a part of the normal election process for a new term. Unfortunately, they missed Katie's term that was due to expire at that same time. And from what I understand, Katie, and correct me if I'm wrong, you graciously agreed to hang in there for a while. And I don't know how long that is. So, you don't either? Oh, great. Well, we love having you.
I did not re-up for myriad reasons. So I will certainly stay on until my seat can be filled. But I can't commit to 3 more years. So.
Sure. You'll be sending your kids to college before you're off the board.
Or not. We'll just homeschool the rest of our lives.
So the can anybody offer any advice in terms of when that will come up for review by council and action? Councilman Waters?
Yeah, the council has done this twice a year, once in December and then typically in June, and we delayed it this year for a couple of reasons. It's a little embarrassing that we have the situations that exist like Katie's, where somehow it gets missed. And I know in Catherine's case, she's re-upped and then was told that, well, you don't need an interview because you're already on the board. It's like, and we had already spoken to that. So I'm not certain where the disconnects occur between conversations like these and what happens in the city manager suite. But it's not very satisfying that this breaks down and that the communication is not clear. I will tell you that I would expect that between now and the middle of December, that we will have accepted applications and we'll go through an interview process for people to begin new terms in January. So we ought to make certain that if Katie's willing to stay on till then for another couple of months, to make certain that position, and Nancy, I'm happy to follow up or as a liaison.
I'm in conversation with the city clerk's office and we're getting it all worked out. So I have no doubt.
That'll be the time frame.
It was one of those, and the city clerk's office is wonderful. This is just one of those COVID weird things I think that happened. And so we're going to get all straightened out, and they have our dates that we had figured out sometime. I have no idea when it was. Sometime prior to 2020, we figured out what people's real dates were and had communicated those. So it'll be all straightened out shortly. And I really appreciate, Katie, you hanging in there. I know things were a little disorganized, but we appreciate having you for a couple extra months and your input, because we missed all of you during our hiatus. So
well,
thank you for doing that.
This is where another wrinkle manifests itself, because if you were to go to our bylaws, we have some statements in our bylaws about officer elections at meetings after the placement of new board members. And quite honestly, I don't know what to do. I mean, technically, Catherine is a new board member and we could throw all that up for an election. But with Katie's seat uncertain till the first of the year, I'll ask the board, what do you want to do? Do you want to try and conduct elections now? We could, technically it would be tonight, but I don't think we're ready to do it tonight. We could defer to next meeting, or we could defer to after the first of the year. That would be at variance with the bylaws, but I think if we had consensus from the board, we could probably do what we needed to do in this situation. I mean, after all, we are in a pandemic. Thoughts? Don't everybody raise your hand at one time now. Cynthia?
I think deferring until after January, once we have Katie's replacement, makes the most sense.
Catherine?
I would agree with that, because it seems like it would be about the same amount of time that we would have waited anyway. you know, given the normal pattern of things. A couple of months.
Anybody else? Kathy, Katie, you have any thoughts?
I mean, if my opinion matters, I would agree that I think it would be, yeah, it would be best served to wait until you have somebody new. Then you can, you know, people, because otherwise, yeah, I don't think, you know, somebody might want to have a role, but they can't for whatever reason for that because we're waiting to see who's going to be next. So I think it's best to just have everybody in place before you do any assigning of roles.
Kathy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, it was just pretty much what Katie said. Just it'd be best to wait until we get that replacement in.
Okay, so can I have a motion to defer officer elections till after Katie's replacement is named for the board after the first of the year, no later than February, say? I have a motion.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? I think everybody's hand is up on that. So please note in minutes, Catherine, that the board has agreed to do that. We'll defer officer elections till after Katie's replacement is named, no later than February of next year. As if something happens, you know, we should move forward with the officer placement. Okay, I had another item that I wanted to throw in under, or I had something that I wanted to throw in under other business. Are we done with the discussion on board member terms before I move on? Catherine?
I just wanted to note that according to the original agenda, we also have the Friends of the Library report to discuss. Like not Nancy's agenda, but how we normally proceed in our meetings.
Sure.
For the record, wherever we want to work it in.
Okay, well, let me make sure we're done with board member terms and the discussion surrounding that. Are we ready to move on as a group then? I'll assume that's a yes. So in deference to the topic you just brought up, Catherine, do we have a report from the Friends? Well, I'll do Kathy and then I'll do Catherine.
Yes, I have a report.
Do you care to give it?
I would love to give it. Oh, she's going to put up on that. Great. Thank you, Catherine. So the Friends did meet in person in February, but they did not meet in March. And then as you'll see in the notes there, they have been meeting monthly using started off with WebEx and then they used Zoom. I was not present at the September 23rd meeting, however, but they were continuing to meet. The lobby bookshop sales and gift store sales went on from January through March until the library closed. The bookshop sales totaled $8,314.31, and the gift store sales totaled $752.93. There were no sales, of course, March and April, and they did resume again once the library reopened. In August, the lobby book shop brought in $722.77, and the gift store brought in $30.41. They were able to hold their February book sale, which netted about $9,479.54 after sales tax and credit card fees. During the pandemic, they ended their fiscal year. So last fiscal year, which is May 2019 to April 2020, The bookshop sales are the highest portion of their total revenue. It's about 41% of their revenue, and the quarterly book sales are 30%. So the majority of their revenue is the sales. In April, they elected Prudence Carter as their new board president. The treasurer reported that the federal 990 and 990T forms were filed in June, and unrelated business income tax was paid at that filing. Their membership is 457 members as of August. And in the April board meeting, the board did approve a new volunteer to manage this membership since Charity resigned from that duty. And that volunteer began in June. They, in one of the month's meetings, they informed us that they now have an Instagram account. If anybody is interested in following them, it's at Longmont Friends. And there was quite a bit of business that they covered during the months they met, and one of them was concerning the lobby bookshop. They wanted to raise some prices for some of the items, the DVDs especially. So the board did approve increasing DVD sets of 3 or more discs to $5, oversized books to $4, and special features to $5 for members and $6 for non-members. These new prices were in effect as of July 23rd when the library reopened. Since reopening, the bookshop volunteers have to restock the bookshop and by working out their shift timing with the library circulation staff. And they have had to move their prep area downstairs to the stock room to free up space behind the circulation desk for library use. So the board approved up to $350 to be expended to outfit the new area with a HEPA filter and lighting and so forth. The annual meeting of course, was postponed until the guidelines are going to allow them to have larger gatherings. The current board members whose terms would have normally expired in April are continuing to serve until the new members can be officially elected. There were 3 names brought forward by the nominating committee, and they are Deanna Hebert, Sharon McCaffrey, and Kimberly McGee, and they have been attending meetings since July. The board is currently reviewing the bylaws and making changes and updating them, which will provide a way to replace board members in this unique situation of COVID-19. Business was also concerning book donations. In April, of course, they were already talking to Nancy about how do we approach donating books and how do we handle them once they've been donated. So they have come up with some new procedures and for using in the sorting room, and it required a complete reconfiguration of the room to create a safe environment for the volunteers. So at that meeting in May, the board approved up to $500 funding for custom tables to be built. And then in August, they approved additional funding of $525 to purchase shelving and 3 utility carts. However, at present, no donations are being accepted. They are just still trying to work through what they already have. There was, of course, several months where there were funding requests from the library. In February, 4,000 young to purchase seed program, and they held a gardening fair on March 1 to kick off the program. For the month of April, there were no requests, and in May, they approved a $7,000 request for the children's and teen for the summer reading program. And in June, they approved a request by Kirsten Porman for $1,250 for 12 new books in a bag. And a second request was received from Claire Studholm for $4,000 to purchase reading materials authored by Black authors and persons of color, as well as books about anti-racism to supplement what was already offered in the children and teens area. Devin Smith in Adult Services requested an amount of $3,000 to purchase additional e-materials from Overdrive and book group kits on the subject of racial inequality and injustice. The children and teens area amount was immediately approved, but more information was obtained about what exactly book group kits were, and the request for that amount of money was approved via a doodle poll. There were no requests for the July and August meetings. The next meeting is scheduled for October 28th, 2020, and it will be via Zoom. And that's how busy they've been.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that report. Any questions of Kathy on that? I don't see any. Okay, does anyone else have anything they want to offer under other business at this time? I see no hands on that. I have one or two items that I just wanted to put in front of the group. The first one is with respect to other minutes, and maybe you can help us with this, Catherine. Do you have in your possession as secretary any other minutes that the board needs to sign off on? You don't have to answer that question, but if you can look back through your records, I just want to make sure that we've signed off on all the minutes and we're legally correct and all the rest of that. I had this nagging thought going through my head that there was one that we hadn't done that for. So
We did one when you were gone, because you were gone at the meeting right before the pandemic, right, Cynthia?
right.
We did that. I don't have any red flags in my mind about anything we missed.
Okay, great. I mean, I'm just trying to satisfy an itch, scratch an itch. So if there's nothing there, great.
Mark, I'll look in our binder
Do you have the bind? Okay, yeah.
that Tracy keeps, and we'll see if there's anything that needs signature, which there may well be with COVID and Tracy being out and all kinds of things.
You know, the other challenge would be knowing what was said anyway, whether you could remember it all. But
we definitely have copies of all the minutes. Whether or not we have a signed copy of all of them, I need to look, but we have copies of all the minutes. So.
How are we supposed to sign them now?
That's my question. How do you sign them now? How do other committees handle that? Does anybody know?
Can you not use the DocuSign or something like that?
I'm old school. I don't know.
I think you'd have to somehow convert it into a DocuSign document, which would mean having an account.
I mean, I can certainly help if that's all that's needed. Is we need to get an e-signature on there. I can help with that.
Eddie has a DocuSign account because I sign off on minutes for the Longmont Housing Authority Board. So and that's how we sign off on.
DocuSign.
Yeah, Nicole, does that come from you?
No, it doesn't. It must be something from the city clerk's office. I'm not sure.
All right, it's coming from Olivia, I think, then from Ally J. So.
Oh yeah, that would make sense. We can figure something out though.
Yeah.
Just let us know, Nancy.
Okay, will do.
Great question. Okay. Also, in this agenda, didn't allow time for comments by members of council. Do you have anything for us, Dr. Waters, that you want to tickle our
I have a
interest?
long list, but you don't have enough time. Yeah, we have a whole cluster of ordinances, budget issues, local ballot questions. But let me just see if anybody has questions about stuff that you read about. And I'm going to say again, if I'm the only one that thinks we need more libraries, then nobody else needs to correspond with the Longmont Leader or the Times Call or anyplace else. But if I'm not the only one, people ought to know that.
Well, maybe I can ask you this question while the others are thinking of theirs. You know, way back when the library district initiative was in its infancy, there were discussions with each member of council that were on council at that time. And there seemed to be a level of support for globally for the library and what the library was trying to accomplish. Have we lost that? Is that, or have other priorities supplanted that?
I would no reason to conclude or observe that there's any less support for the library today than there was then, or any less interest in what's the best approach forward to close gaps, both in terms of our facilities and operational support. Obviously, a few things have happened since then, and I think people have been anxiously waiting on the results of the feasibility study. But I do think the feasibility study tees up the kind of conversation that needs to occur about, so now what? How do we move forward? The general approach to council meetings during this pandemic, although this is changing even kind of in real time, has been to try to keep things on the agenda that are kind of a routine, that have to go forward, items that require more discourse, where there might be controversy, not that this would be controversial, I think, have been kind of on the back burner until we could get back face to face. But the realities are that we're not going to be face to face for a while, and we're starting to see more typical agendas. So, Mark, I don't think you've lost support. I just think, times are a little different, and there's been a lot of other stuff that have been on people's minds and in the agendas. So.
The only reason I say that is that when you were speaking in front of council about on the library's behalf, there didn't seem to be the enthusiasm for your arguments that I hoped would be there. So maybe we'll see that down the road. It had nothing to do with the speaker. It was
It probably had a lot to do with the speaker, but I don't interpret don't interpret any lack of response to my comments. For me, it was top of mind when Nancy had a chance to share her, she had her 30 seconds or whatever it was. I'm certain on a very short timeline, we're trying to get a lot of voices in from the staff, and they were all told to pick out the one or two things, right, that you want to highlight, I'm guessing, based on what we heard. And she did share enough of what's in the feasibility study that it gave me a chance to comment. But I don't interpret other response or the lack of other comment as a lack of support.
Okay, great. Glad to hear that. Well, I'm going to move on then, Councilman Waters. Oh yeah, would love to hear everything you have to say. But I was accused of having holding long-winded meetings at the last meeting that I saw, so I'll try and move this forward. I had one other item though. Next month, I believe our scheduled meeting is October 26th. It's likely I'm going to miss that meeting, so Cynthia may need you to step forward on that, and Nicole, you probably need to recognize that. Did I lose Cynthia?
I think we lost her.
That's bad news.
I can contact
Who are you
her
concerned
though.
about losing?
Cynthia.
No, she's here.
Oh, no, I'm here.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I was just unmuting. Yeah, I'll be here, so I can do that.
Okay, great. And Nicole just needs to set you up to run the Zoom thing.
Sounds good.
So are there any other issues that the board wishes to discuss at this time? Seeing no hands, I will move to adjourn then at 8:24. It's great seeing you all.
It's really nice to see you. I've seen a couple of you in person. If you come in the library, and during, I'm pretty much there all the time. If you come in the library, say something at the front so I can come say hi to you in person from a distance. It's nice to see you.
Stay safe. Thank you all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.